She's fast. What is going on? This is Outrunner, and today, as promised, I wanted to go into some of the individual settings I have on my RadioMaster TX16s Mark II. Wanted to go into some settings that I have for the Flerken just to give you an idea of how I actually have mine set up. You may or may not want to use some of the things that I'm doing in my setup. We're going to do a really simple portion of that setup, which basically the inputs, the mixes, and the special functions that are specific to the basic setup. I've added some additional stuff like battery callouts and battery voltage callouts and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go into that. Just enough to get you in the air and flying this particular drone or plane based on the way I have it set up. So we're going to go to a top down and then show you what we have going on in this radio so that you can ask your questions if you have any. And if we need to, I can also make videos in the future getting into a little bit more detail of specific things that I've done. And I'll plan on essentially sharing with you as well some of the things that I did and why I did them when it comes to the setup of this particular aircraft. So let's go ahead and get to the drop down and get it done. How about that? Okay, here we have the radio, and what I'm going to try to do is try to go through what we have going on the radio as far as the Boomin Flerken in a way that would make sense to you if you might be going into this for the very first time. I want to just show you what I've done and why I've done it that way, and then you can take, you can go ahead and either take a portion of what I'm sharing and use it when you do your setup or not. It's totally up to you. So here we have the Boomin Flerken. Of course, I just set my screen up to show me the RSS value at the top, how many flights I have. This is the battery on the radio itself, and then this is the battery information for the battery connected to the aircraft, because I am using the ER6 receiver in that aircraft, which again, all of this is ELRS, and it's using a built-in ELRS module in the RadioMaster TX16s, and again using ER6. So let's go ahead and eventually, I have not put my callouts on a potentiometer yet so that I can change that. So I'm hoping I'll be able to do that soon. So first of all, when we get right into this, with any aircraft, you're going to have 4 control surfaces, and that's what we're mainly going to be talking about, is how I set my control surfaces up today, with some small things within special functions that I'll go over a little bit too. So you have your ailerons, elevator, rudder, and throttle, essentially, AETR. So, or your throttle and rudder. So that is the way I actually have it set up in my radio, but I have a couple of things different. So I initially did use the wizard to set this, set the aircraft up. So I just did a very basic setup with the wizard in the radio, and then I went in and made some additional adjustments and changes based on the way I wanted to set this up. So that's the model setup. Of course, it's labeled in my favorites right now, and I am using my own picture that I have created for the Flerken, and that's where you can actually change that. And of course, it's using the internal module, which is the using CRSF, which is the internal ELRS module that I'm using in this aircraft. So we go back, and again, I apologize. It's going to keep announcing. I need to put the volume control on a potentiometer so I can actually turn that down in the future. So if we go to flight modes, I haven't done anything here. Everything is basically or essentially the same in flight modes, and so nothing there. So what we're talking about primarily, again, is inputs, mixes, outputs, and a couple of special functions. So we have our ailerons, and now the ailerons, I actually have them set up in 2 different ways. So if we go to outputs really quickly, you'll see that my channel 1 is there, which is aileron. Then I have elevator, channel 2. Channel 3 is my throttle, and then channel 4 is the rudder. So how can we verify that? We're looking at outputs, ailerons. You see that channel 1 is moving back and forth here. We have our elevator So you see that your elevator is moving. Then you have your throttle. If I turn on the throttle, so it's active, the throttle's moving. Turn that back off. And then if we go down to rudder, you see our rudder's moving. The rudder I actually have set up just as they do in the instructions from the flight test video. The rudder is actually set up for my differential thrust. I do have a switch set, which I talked about before, and that switch turns on and off that differential thrust in case I don't want to turn it on. But it's also bound to my SF switch. Turned on, it will turn on the differential thrust and off, and then the differential thrust is also on a separate switch individually. Now, if we go down a little bit, you see I have 5, and in the ELRS system, channel 5 is an arming channel. So in the ER6 receiver, I actually have channel 5 mapped to 6. So channel 6, the output from channel 5, you notice channel 5 is doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. So channel 6, the pinout on channel 5 is actually registering for channel 6. And then the pinout for channel 6 is going to 7. So I just kept it in order instead of making 5, 7. I try to do it that way so it makes sense. I'd be in place. So channel 6 is actually an aileron channel as well, and you'll be able to see how I split that up. One aileron is operating on channel 1. The second aileron is operating on channel 6. And then channel 7 is my other throttle channel, which is operating one of the motors. So one motor's operating off of channel 3, the other motor's operating off of channel 7. That's how I separated them. And then I added some mixes to each one in order for them to perform the function that I wanted them to perform. So if we go back over here, what you'll see is I've labeled them. So aileron R, the right aileron, as you're sitting in the cockpit, is here, and I actually have weight, and that weight is associated with the switch position. My which one is that? That is my SG switch, which is my rate switch.
Medium rate, high rate, medium rate, low rate.
And I went through and I set each one of them up, and I actually labeled this first one aileron R. So if you go to edit, you take a look at this, and this is basically the same for every single one of your rates. So that is low rates. So I'll put it aileron right, and then L for low. That's the low rate. And then I set my weights. And then you'll notice those rates, and then the switch that is on is the SG switch. And I also added some expo, 30% expo to it. So if we go back and you look at the next one, and this is going to be very similar for each one of these. So all you do is you insert after, and then you set your medium. So I set my initial up as my low, and then I insert after and set that up as my medium. And then my medium rate is shown here, and it's got line name is right aileron right medium, and then the weight and the offset. And so there you go. So if we go back in, same thing, and based on the switch position, that's what highlights. So elevator does not have, it doesn't have different modes. Elevator is elevator. I didn't change the modes for it. I want my elevator functioning the same, and I added 20% expo to that. The offset is 10. The weight is 100%. So it's getting full elevator, but I did add an expo to it. So no matter what mode I'm in, I still have full control of my elevator, which is what I wanted. Throttle right, same thing. Throttle, I don't have any expo on. The throttle is just a throttle, and that's the right motor. Again, as you're sitting in your cockpit, the motor on the right-hand side. That is what that is. Rudder. So the rudder itself, you see, is just the rudder itself. That's all it is. You go to edit, and I have the rudder, which is our differential with 30% expo, and that's basically it. It just controls the two channels that are associated with the rudder. And so if we go down, and that happens, it's actually controlled in the mixes. So this is what the input is, and then the mixes are actually what's changing how the rudder is actually functioning. And then we have our aileron left. Our aileron left has the same 3 settings as the aileron right. If we go back to the top, aileron right, 30% expo all the way down, low rate, medium, high rate, and then the 22%, 35%. That's the rate of travel. And then the same thing down here for our ailerons, 22%, 35, 66, all controlled by the SG switch. And then last but not least, there's the throttle. The throttle's at 100%. I haven't made any adjustments to that. It is what it is. I haven't offset it. I have not added weight. What that offset does is it helps to center the position. So let's talk about that really quickly. Let's go back, because you notice that my ailerons had offsets in there. And I was trying to remember off the top of my head the reason why the offset was there, and now I remember. So you notice that my aileron offset, oh, that's elevator. Let's go back. I do have an elevator offset and the aileron offset. So we want to go to aileron, any of them. All the offsets should be the same. Edit. So we have a negative 16 on that left aileron. The reason why there's a negative 16 on that left aileron is because as Josh is sharing with you or telling you how to set up the ailerons, he's actually in the instruction video, he's actually telling you how to set it up for not the Boomin Flerken, but the regular Flerken as a wing. And what that means is, in most wings, you want to give your ailerons, you want to give them a little bit of up deflection on both sides. So you have to change your offset in order to compensate for that. And that way, it gives it a little bit of nose up attitude as you're flying. But because of the fact that we have an elevator on this aircraft, the Boomin Flerken has an elevator, you don't need that. Now, when you're setting up or putting in your push rods, you actually bend your push rods and they're basically set. There's no adjustment to the way he has you connecting your push rods, which means you either have to create a new push rod to level off your ailerons, or you put them on a separate channel as I did, and you add an offset. So my right is offset by negative 16. And if we go back, let's go back in and look at the left. The left should be offset by positive 16 so that they are level with the wing, because we don't need that in the setup for the Boomin Flerken. That's the reason why that offset is there. The other thing I did was, if you look at my elevator, my actual elevator, I did add a little bit of a offset to the elevator as well. You notice I'm using this, or I'm using the buttons just to get to where I need to. Added negative 10% just to give it a little bit. It does have a little bit of up trim, basically, from the inputs going into it, so that it does have a little bit of a up nose up attitude. And then I can adjust that out using my trim switches if I need to, as it's actually flying in the air. And so that's what I do with that. So if we go into mixes, which is the next part that we need to be concerned about, channel 1, mixes, edit, and then you see everything here for your mixes. I really didn't do anything mixing. Not a lot that I've done there. But what you want to see, or what you need to see, because this is just going to be sitting there. I haven't really made any adjustments there. But one thing I did do, for the throttle, that second line that you see there, that is for differential. So it actually adds in and controls the differential. So I named it differential. The source is the rudder, because it's using the throttle in order to increase. So differential, 100%, no real offset or anything. And I put it on a switch, which is the SA switch, and that SA switch will turn on and off the differential. So that's one of the things I did as a mix there. And The rest of it is pretty much self-explanatory. Channel 7, same thing, your throttle channel, and I added the differential
0
for the
volts.
other side of the other motor. So there's a motor on both sides. I added that in for each one so that if I did do a little bit of differential, you would see that it would change. And you notice that that bottom number is actually changing. So outputs is basically going to show you what's going to happen for each one of these as you move them around. And so we were here a little earlier. You see that there's no sub trim. Basically, you can make some adjustments if you need to. I've inverted my aileron channel 1. I had to invert that. And then my aileron channel 2, from my other aileron,
0 volts.
is also inverted. And I could have named them, but I didn't name them. It's inverted also because as I was actually checking the aircraft to make sure when I go to the right, my right aileron lifts raises. If I'm going to the left, my left aileron raises, and the right one goes down. As I was making those checks, I realized that those weren't done correctly. Same thing with the elevator. The reason why the elevator has this little reverse symbol here is because the elevator was doing the same thing. I pulled back, it was going down. I pushed forward, it was going up, and that is not what I needed to do. I needed it to be the opposite of that. And so that's the way I have that set up. Now let's go quickly just to special functions, just so you can see a couple of things here that I've set up. Not a whole lot that you need to be concerned about, but just to let you know that my my SF switch override here is set to override channel 3 so that I can turn on and off my throttle. And then the other one, the other override is SF as well, to override channel 7 so that I can turn off the throttle on the other motor. Since I have them separate, since they are separate motors on separate channels, you can actually put a Y adapter between the two motors and connect them that way. I have my motors and both of my ailerons all on a separate channel. And then that's pretty much it. This is the play track. Is actually, I've set up functions to play the sounds and stuff that you're hearing. The differential turned on and off, which I created the sounds for those. Which is here.
Differential off. Differential off. Differential on.
I set those up.
0
Low rates.
volts, medium rate, high rate.
And you can see those here. These are just
Medium
sounds.
Rate, low rate, medium rate, high rate.
That's what I've set up in those special functions there for that to run. Just to give you a little bit more, I'll just let you take a peep. These are the telemetry sensors. Right now, they're not reading anything, but those are the sensors, and they're not reading anything because I don't have a battery inside the aircraft right now. So any of these, when you first put a battery in your aircraft and you have the wire connected, especially to the ER6, that will give you the battery voltage back. What you're going to want to do is go down to Discover New. Once you could Discover New, it's going to search. We're not going to do that now because I don't want to mess anything up. But it would search for every single sensor that you might have connected to the ER6 where it can send that information back. It's going to give you all of that stuff back. And then you can go into your radio and do stuff like set up to tell you what your RSS value is, to tell you what your battery value is. You can do stuff like... the special function for your flight timer and all that kind of stuff you can set up very easily, just without the battery in the aircraft. So that's pretty much it. I really wanted to share that with you. I hope that this has been valuable in some way. If you do have questions, make sure you ask those questions in the comment section. All right, so thank you so much for coming by and checking this out with me. I really appreciate it. I hope that I've been of value or have given you something of value today on how I set up or did my initial setup of the Boomin Flerken in my RadioMaster TX16s. I'll be going over and sharing some additional things in the future. Of course, much of that is going to be based on the questions that you have, so make sure you go down in the comment section and ask your questions. If you enjoyed the video, if you got any value from this video, please make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe, because I'm planning on trying to do even more in the future when it comes to many different builds and stuff. We got a lot of projects that we're working on, including on my other channel. If you haven't checked it out, go to Outrunner Tech, and I'm doing a speed run challenge with Poor Boys RC, and doing decent. Right now I'm in the middle of the pack. We'll see what happens, but I'm doing okay. But it's also been an experience. So thank you so much for coming by. Go over there, check it out. Let me know that you came from here to there, if you do. And ask your questions in the comments. And I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care. At full throttle, we don't have a gyro.